All right, guys, so we are gonna be doing this watercolor activity today. This is what I did with my previous class. These, again, 4 little demos. How to do a flat wash, a graded wash, wet and wet, and then dry brush. And then we are gonna be doing a cypress tree today. I'm gonna go slow today. I know that in my previous second period class, I kind of flew by, and I wanna apologize to my students for going too fast. Sometimes I forget this is a beginning art class and not one of my advanced classes. So this is what we're gonna be doing today. Basic palette. I used purple, a little bit of red, blues, dry brush for the blues, and then we did a local Monterey cypress tree. Okay. All right. Everybody ready? Is everybody ready? Oh, it's also very helpful to have like either a paper towel or a tissue. I'm gonna just kind of get my brushes ready here. All right. So for these demos, I'm gonna be using this number 6 flat from Blick. You guys all ready? You guys have some water? Beautiful. Okay, I think John's still getting some. Yo, John, those glasses, they're fire. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is a flat wash. This is for doing a block of solid color within here. And we're going to just use, I'm gonna use this, a blue. Okay, so you're mixing it straight in the pan. You're adding water to your pan. I know your pan's a little bit different than mine. This is gonna enable us to have a consistent color throughout this square. And this is important for doing like backgrounds or walls or just a solid chunk of color in our compositions, okay? Whatever they may be, landscape, cityscape, you know, still life, or, you know, original painting. Okay, so what we're gonna do is all I'm gonna do is go from left to right and try my best to make sure it's a nice solid block of color, okay? So I'm just gonna go quickly, turn over my paint and just move, redipping. And while everything's kind of wet, I'm just moving quickly and evening out my color. Watercolor is kind of a magical medium in the sense that you don't need a lot to like make it go. And it just really is a magical medium. You don't want to necessarily force it, okay? So just a solid, notice I'm just keeping it, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, go back in, because a lot of times the watercolor doesn't necessarily like that. So that's gonna be our first thing that we do. And what's cool is, you know, yeah, it's a solid block, but there's also some really cool kind of fun things going on here within the paint and as it dries and sets up, okay? The next thing that we're going to work on is going to be the graded wash, okay? Graded wash is you're creating a smooth transition, okay? From an intense color down to a more translucent version of that same color, meaning that we're gonna load up our brush with a lot of color and kind of start at the very top and work our way down so that it gets less intense as we move, you know, further down, all right? I'm gonna just kind of load up my brush. I'm gonna use red, okay? So I'm loading up my brush. Add a little bit more water there. I'm just gonna kind of load it up. And then when I hit the very top and kind of move my way down, and then just dip a little water, dip my brush into a little bit of water as I'm going down. So here we go. You ready? So we're gonna start at the very top of this box, kind of work our way down. And I'm just moving slowly down. And I'm losing a lot of that pigment that's loaded up on my brush. Okay. Gonna go back up here and kind of move this around. Don't want this water. That's probably Kathleen calling. Joe Mello. Oh yeah, that's Kathleen. She's gonna ask how many kids we got.
Hello.
So we're transitioning from intense color down to more translucence. Okay.
Oh, we've got 2 kids. Yeah, just 2. Oh,
It's for lunch. Sure, as long as it's vegetarian.
Sure. Steven says yes if it's vegetarian.
If it's not, that's okay.
If not, then no, thank you. Oh, okay.
Okay, so I mean, these aren't taking that long, but this is going to give you kind of a stab at using the watercolor and getting comfortable with it. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is wet and wet.
Thank you.
So the first thing we're going to do is just load up a brush with some water.
Yes.
Looks like my water's got a little bit of tint from the colors that I've been using, but that's okay. So we're going to just lay down water within the grid. Adding more water. And this is a technique that watercolors use to create some really magical effects that are going on the page, right? So right now I just have water kind of laid down on the grid. And what's cool is when I start adding some pigment to this, it's going to kind of move around and do magical stuff. So I'm gonna go back into my blue, kind of load up my brush. And all I'm gonna do is go through and just kind of drop some paint. Actually, I think I'm gonna use my number 5 here. My bright here rather than the flat. And I'm just going to drop pigments in here and just let the paint kind of do its thing, kind of move around within that wet area. And it's creating these kind of like tie-dye things going on here. It's kind of fun. And just play around with it. Make some marks and see what happens to the pigment in that wet environment, what it does. It's a lot of fun. Just push it around a little bit. And notice how it's not going outside into the dry areas of the paper. Staying within the confines of that already wetted down area inside that grid. Really fun. Okay. Okay. And you can, throw other colors in there. You really kind of play around with it. All right. So the next thing that we're gonna do is a dry brush. So what I'm gonna do is maybe go in with my forest green. I'm gonna use another brush to kind of activate the pigment there with some water. Set that aside. Now I have a dry brush. It's kind of a hybrid between an acrylic brush and a watercolor brush. Again, this is an artifact from my classroom, so as you can see, it's been heavily used and damaged, but that's okay. I like damaged and really used brushes. So I'm gonna go in to the pigment that I have here. Notice I did not pre-dip my paintbrush into the water. I'm just gonna grab a little pigment here, and I'm going to use this brush to create some grass forms here. And this is a dry brush technique. A little bit more. Notice how we're getting some cool textures from the dry brush. Overlaying more pigment as I go along. I really want to show those brush strokes, the actual individual hairs, kind of creating that effect of growing grass. Keeping it kind of natural and organic as I'm going through. Cool. All right. And I constantly have a piece of tissue or paper towel to like dry brushes after I wash them in my water. Okay. All right, so the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to kind of draw, and we'll draw it out first. So grab a pencil, and then we're just gonna draw a simple Monterey cypress tree, okay? And I'm going to make it look kind of curvy and bonsai, you know? Like, that's what's really lovely about cypress trees is they kind of have this cool, like, bonsai look to them. Right? So I'm just drawing the trunk of the tree really lightly. And then we're gonna go through, and I wanted to just block this trunk shape in for you guys just to see. And I'll draw it a little bit darker so that it's a little bit clearer to see. And then as we go along later on this year with the different painting things that we do, you'll be able to not have to draw necessarily. But sometimes, you know, drawing will enable you to give your paintings a little bit of structure before you go in it, so you don't get necessarily lost in that process. So draw this shape out right now. I haven't filled in the other parts or even the smaller branches because I want to do that with my small brush or even with my number 4, okay? We're going to be using green, a little bit black, and brown to kind of block everything in. I did this a little bit differently than the previous one because I think I went too fast here, and this way it's gonna slow me down by having you guys draw it first, and then within here we're gonna be using a combination of browns and blacks, and also like watering down the black too as well to create kind of a gray, because cypress trees have a very interesting color when it comes to their trunk, right? How am I doing, Sophie? Am I going too fast? Okay, give me a thumbs up if I'm okay. Am I going too fast? I can't see a thumb. Yeah, all right, cool. Here we go. All right, now, you guys all have brown within your color palette. We're gonna take some brown. We're gonna put it over here. You guys also have a little bit of a mixing palette on the side of your pan. I'm gonna water this down a lot. Okay. And we're gonna make sure that our light source is coming from the right and shadows will be on the left-hand side, okay? So I'm gonna load up my brush with a lot of water, and I'm just gonna kind of push that paint around, going to the edge of my pencil drawing. I'm filling that in. What's cool is that you'll be able to erase, if you have marks that you don't necessarily want, you can erase those later. And I can stretch this kind of grayish brown tone pretty far, right? So this is gonna be like a base color for what I'm doing. Yeah, kind of moving around. Now I can go in with some darker tones, like getting into the black a little bit. And those darker tones are going to go on the left-hand side. My shadows. So you can do this right now. Even while this is still a little bit wet. And just keep your brush strokes loose. It's gonna make a better result for you, I believe. rather than trying to get super, tight. Just kind of keep your brush loose as you're doing this, and kind of drag the brush as you do this. It's going to create all kinds of cool things going on. Create some cool shadows, etc. Okay? Let's take our time doing this, yeah? Go in with some water here. Let me finish this guy off. Pushing paint, pushing paint. Now, here's the thing. I got a little bit too much water down here. All I do is lift. So I'll take a Kleenex or a paper towel and just dab it. And then I have a little bit of pigment there that's, creating some undertones, but it's not as wet as it was before. So we're just working on the main trunk right now. Nothing crazy. All right. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of get into the black here and a little bit more brown. We're gonna do some of the smaller branches, the little detail branches, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up to the top here of these larger branches that I've made here and kind of start putting in some of the shadows that are beneath a lot of the branches and the greenery. So we're just gonna kind of shape out a little bit and drop in shadows, because we want to do is create a shape of the tops of the tree, okay, and the bottoms of those areas that are going to be in shadow. So what I'm doing is like making broccoli shapes, you might say, with areas coming off. And these are going to be the shadow areas beneath a lot of the information of green. So I'm also leaving some space too to fill in with green, like a lighter green. Okay? So I'm making these broccoli shapes. Again, mix like a dark brown with the black. So I'm making a dark brown. If you want to also include a little bit of blue, you can. Or leaving a white background for now, because that's okay. We're just doing kind of a study. Broccoli shapes. A bit more here. Right there. Boom. Working really dark here, guys. we're doing these shadows kind of first. I'm gonna fill this up here, right here. Really dark shapes. Don't be afraid to create really good contrast. Dark contrast. Trust me, it'll all work out. Go a little bit higher. A little wet on wet. I'm also going to use that same brown, but really kind of wet it down to kind of pull out smaller branches that are in shadow. And when I'm making smaller branches, all I'm doing is I'm dragging very lightly. Just making squiggles, really. This is a number 4 brush, so I'm not really, too concerned about, detail. I'm also going to put some that are coming off these branches here. Cypress trees, tend to have like a lot of messing limbs, and they're bundled up really weird. And I'm gonna taper these too as well, so that meaning that, the ends are gonna be a lot thinner. You guys see that? Okay. All right, I think we have a good base. So catch up right now. I'm gonna let you guys catch up. I'm gonna start washing my brush and get ready for laying down lighter green. Okay. Color seems really weird here. All right. So if you should have yellow and some form of green. I'm going to be using just straight yellow with a little bit of the forest green. And we're going to be doing the tops. We're going to go on top of these dark shadows that we created here. So I'm going to mix some green together. Green, green, green. Lots of green. Load up my little mixing palette over here. Okay, I'll wash that. I don't want to necessarily contaminate my yellow. Go in with my yellow. Add more water to that. Okay, and then mix it with that green as best I can without contaminating my too much. All right, let's do a little test. That's pretty good. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the top of these areas, these shadow areas, with a lighter green and press them so that they're adjacent and on top of those areas. Fill those in because they're part of the same thing. This is just going to be the top. So I'm filling all those spaces in, and I'm also going to form it up so that it has a better shape on the top. Again, think broccoli. texture. Adding this green in here. Filling in these areas of white. Cool. We're getting there. Notice I'm kind of doing a stipple technique here. There's a little debris, so I'm pulling these greens out. Always grip hold of that paintbrush. So I'm also going to overlay some of these areas in the front here with that same green, that forest green that we just mixed up and drag. This is a really simple way to create that depth of field. That's hard to achieve sometimes. I think broccoli. It's a better shape. Yeah. There we go. Got some dark greens in here. There we go. Just push that and fill it. Now, we've got a good thing going here, as you can see. Pretty neat. We're gonna grab some black. We're gonna go through and just kind of darken some areas here to create that contrast, which really kind of pushes things further back. Does that make sense? Like right there. Push that back, push that back, push this back. Push some of these shadows behind. You want that contrast. Not a bad thing. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Wash the brush. Go through. Create some highlights. I'm gonna use a lot of yellow in the green. And just add even more layers with this really light green on the very tops. Go back in. I'm gonna pull some of these shadows. Kind of chunk it up a little bit. So again, guys, this is kind of just a primer getting you into using watercolor. I'm gonna add some shadows to my trunk here a little bit. I'm gonna go in with the black and the brown. And like right here, add some shadow. And some texture on this side. Darken these. Maybe just a smidge too dark. And then I'll go through and just kind of darken some of these guys. Contrast was getting a little not as good as I'd like it to be. And then right there, just kind of spread some of that pigment out. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay. All right, guys. I hope you had fun. Again, this is an introduction, and I'll be posting this for you guys to access 24/7.